Good morning, good morning, good morning, folks. And I hope you're not as cold as I am today, but you're feeling good and everything's going lovely and jolly for you this cloudy January morning that we're having. I hope your week started well as well, and I hope you didn't get caught up in all the Blue Monday absolute nonsense that does the rounds every year. And it's nice to see that this year most of that nonsense was about how much of a load of rubbish that is, and it's just a marketing ploy, and there was no actual real scientific evidence behind it at all, and we can all actually be happy and not be miserable if we want to. So today I am going to be chatting to you about sustainable habit and lifestyle change for busy professionals. We did one of these little live streams back before Christmas, and we talked about, I can't remember what we talked about, to be honest. So I'm glad that you have joined me this morning, and hopefully we can answer some questions for you, and hopefully it'll be useful, because let's be honest, this is the time of year that a lot of people are looking at making some changes, but quite often maybe don't go about it in the right way. So what I'd love you to do is to say hello in the comments. I can see Laura and Adrian, you have already left a little comment. Just got the bins in. Bloody cold, isn't it, mate? Laura, I'm glad you're looking forward to it. Hopefully this will be interesting for you, and you can learn a few bits and pieces which you can implement in everyday life. So if you are watching this on LinkedIn or YouTube, it should be live streaming on YouTube as well. Please leave a little comment saying hello. Let me know where in the world you are watching from. And if you've got any questions as we go along, drop them in there as well. We'll have a little bit of a time for Q&A at the end as well, but feel free to bung some questions in as we go along. Elisa, hey, how are you doing? Hope you're well. So yeah, also it would be really good if you're watching this on a replay as well, because this will be available on replay. Please leave a comment as well, even though I won't be seeing it live and I won't be able to give you a little shout out. I can reply to you in the comments if you've got any questions, and I'd love to see who watches it on a replay as well, whatever platform you happen to be on. If you could hit the like button or the react button and send me some kind of love hearts and some maybe laughter faces if I'm being funny at any point, but any of those like good little reaction things as well, that always helps the reach as well. Tash, yes, in Surrey, brilliant. Adrian, Wiltshire. Carly, hey Carly. Yeah, so reactions, tag people in the comments if you think they'd be interested in watching this. Share it if you want. There's all kinds of things you can do to help this reach more people, and if it reaches more people, maybe, just maybe, someone will learn something and they'll be able to implement it in their life to improve their quality of life and be a little bit healthier, a little bit happier, and all of that good stuff. So anything you can do to help me help more people, I am very, very grateful. So I'm going to give you a little question to think about to start with. I'm going to give you a little question just before I kind of tell a story. But the question I'd like you to consider as we get cracking is, if you were mentally and physically fitter, what would that make possible? If you were mentally and physically fitter, what would that make possible? So while you're musing on that, and it may be, it's going to be different for all of you, of course, but while you're thinking about that, I'm going to tell you a little bit of a story about kind of what it means to me and how I came to this conclusion. But some of you will know a bit about my story, some of you won't. Long story short, in 2011, I burned out for the first time. This was as a science teacher. I was only in my second year of teaching, and I was only near the start of my second year of teaching, so I didn't last very long at all. And it wasn't due to the behavior of the kids, like a lot of people expect it to be. It was due to the enormous workload, the long hours, the lack of support, and as well, my own poor stress management behaviors. And I thought at this point, I wanted to go into a career which would keep me fit and healthy rather than making me unwell. So I decided I was going to change completely. I was going to retrain, and I was going to join the health and fitness industry, because what better industry to keep me fit and well, right? Wrong. 5 years later, so I joined the fitness industry in 2012 after I burned out at the end of 2011. And 5 years later in 2017, I burned out again. And I realized at this point that although I changed my external circumstances, I hadn't changed my own behaviors. I'd kind of gone from being a workaholic teacher to being a workaholic personal trainer. I was still a perfectionist trying to get everything just right, which doesn't work well as a teacher, because there's always more you could do. You could always plan a better session. And then once you're working for yourself, anyone who's watching this who works for yourself, you will know that there's always a bit more you could do. And you always feel a bit guilty for maybe taking some downtime. And this resulted in me burning out again in 2017. And I was completely unable to work for 6 months. And during those 6 months, I did a lot of reflection, and I realized that the fitness that I'd been working on, working in the fitness industry for 5 years, was completely irrelevant and completely useless in everyday life. Because, like, if I burned out again, what the hell had I been doing? What use was it? Was I even fit? I didn't know what fitness was. And to be honest, I don't think most people do. And I think that's a big part of why so many people are disengaged with fitness and well-being. And this time of year, everyone kind of comes back around to it, and everyone goes, yeah, I'm going to change this, I'm going to change that, I'm going to give up drinking, I'm going to give up carbs, I'm going to give up every tiny gram of joy in my life in the quest for a washboard stomach or muscular shoulders or a toned peachy bum. All of these things kind of come around again at this time of year, but really most people don't understand what it is that fitness is. And on that note, most people in the fitness industry don't really realize either. Because when I was working in the fitness industry in that way as a personal trainer, I was learning from the people around me, and nobody around me could explain to me what fitness actually was. We have these ideas and we have these kind of these images which pop into our head when we hear the word, but those have been conditioned through a very narrow filter of making us feel insecure, so we buy stuff. Really, that's what it is. So what I'm gonna share with you today on that note is, what is fitness? There's three things I'm going to share with you. I'm going to share with you what fitness actually is. Like, what is the definition? What does it actually mean? And how is that relevant to you, your priorities, and your existing commitments and your desires? The second thing I'm going to share with you is my kind of 5 pillars. So what makes up a fit, healthy lifestyle? And then the third thing I'm going to share with you is how to change your habits and your routines and your daily lifestyle so that you can actually sustain it, so that you're not starting 2024 in exactly the same place as you're starting 2023. Because we do sometimes want to change things, right? We do sometimes want to work on ourselves. It's all well and good being grateful for what we've already got, but sometimes we want to see progress as well. So if we go back to that question that I started with, if you were mentally and physically fitter, what would that make possible? What would that make possible? If you had better mental fitness or physical fitness, what would that allow you to do in your life? The realization that I had in that 6 months where I was unable to work was that fitness, very simply, is your ability to cope with and recover from stress. Fitness is your ability to cope with and recover from stress. So if your physical fitness is your ability to cope with and recover from physical stress, so that could be running a marathon, or it could be going to the gym, or any of those kind of normal fitness industry type things. But it could be getting up and down the stairs, right? Could be playing with your kids, could be just getting out of bed in the morning. It varies from person to person, and it also varies for one person from day to day, over time. What fitness means to you now, the physical demands that you have to cope with now, will be different to 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and they will be different again in another 5 years. In 2020, I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia, which means that I live with chronic pain, chronic fatigue. Some days I have to walk with a stick. My definition of fitness, or what fitness allows me to do, is very different now to what it would have been 3, 4, 5, 6 years ago. And so it will change for you over time. And we need to make sure that it's relevant to us as an individual, but also relevant to us as an individual now. So fitness is your ability, physical fitness is your ability to cope with and recover from physical stress, which means that mental fitness is your ability to cope with and recover from mental stress. And this was a revelation to me. Until I'd framed it in this way, the fitness that I'd been sold was useless in everyday life. But as soon as I connected that with stress, physical demands, mental demands, I realized that fitness is something which can add to my quality of life. And I like to think of it like a currency. It's a currency that we can spend on whatever adds value to our own life. So you would spend your money on something different to me, right? We all spend our money on different things. We have different preferences. We have different priorities. And we can spend our fitness on different things as well. So we might want to spend our fitness on travel or family life or our career. We might want to spend it on charity work or philanthropic work. We might want to spend it on improving our home environment. There's all kinds of things that we can spend this capacity to cope with and recover from stress on. And that will vary from person to person. The thing which the fitness industry miss is that fitness in itself is not an end. It's not motivating. It's not exciting for people. And many people who work in the fitness industry don't understand this, because the kind of people that are attracted into working as personal trainers and coaches are people who do get excited by fitness for the sake of it. They're the kind of people who just want to push themselves to see what they can achieve, which is great and more power to them. But most of the population do not share that. Most of the population need to know, well, why? Why am I doing that? What does it add to my life? It's not good enough to just say, well, you'll be leaner. Well, great. What does that mean? What does that add to my life? Why is it better? Not everyone wants that as a goal. Okay, I'll be stronger. I'll be able to lift more weight in the gym. Great. What does that mean in real terms? Does that add any value to my life? No. And if it doesn't add value to your life, or you don't see why, you're not going to stick to changing things. So keep that question in mind. If you were mentally and physically fitter, what would that make possible? What would it allow you to do that you can't do at the moment? Or what would it allow you to do better than you can currently do? Would it allow you to improve your career? Would it allow you to spend more time with your family? Would it allow you to travel more? Would it allow you to give more to your community? So that's what fitness is. It's your ability to cope with and recover from stress. And it is a currency you can spend on whatever adds value to your life. That's the first point I wanted to share with you. The second thing is about what I call the 5 pillars. We are often bombarded with things, information, articles, videos about what a fit, healthy lifestyle looks like. And a lot of the time they're focused around certain things like exercise, diets, things like that. I have a slightly different approach, although it takes in certain parts from kind of mainstream fitness and well-being. Of course, I'm not saying it's all wrong. I still work in the fitness industry and I think it's great. I just think it needs to move with the times a bit. The 5 pillars contain a little bit more. It's a bit more of a bigger picture. And so I want to share with you what those 5 pillars are. Now, as we go through this, we've only got limited time. I could talk for an hour on each of these topics. I want to be finishing in the next kind of 10 minutes so that I don't keep you all day. You're busy folks. So I'm going to share with you just a brief overview of what these 5 pillars are. And then if you want any more information, I've got, there's tons of content on this. And you feel free to get in touch and I can share with you a bit more detail. But the 5 pillars are as follows. Number 1 is movement, not exercise, not just exercise anyway, but movement. Where can you get more movement into your day? Most of us don't move anywhere near enough, but we don't need to do exercise. It doesn't need to be a gym. It doesn't need to be starting to go for runs every morning. But how can you get more active in your everyday life? Movement, exercise movement, but also non-exercise movement. It's all important. These physical machines that we are walking around, they have evolved to move. They haven't evolved to be just completely static all the time and sit to eat breakfast and then sit in the car on your way to work and then sit at your desk at work and then sit in the car on the way home from work and then sit to eat dinner and then sit in front of the TV. We've evolved to move. So that's the first one, is movement. The second one is nourishment, not dieting, not even nutrition, but nourishment, because nourishment is about feeding yourself what you need. And that isn't just about physical nutrition, like the nutrients that your body needs. You need macronutrients like fats and carbs and fiber and protein and stuff like that. But you also need micronutrients like your vitamins, your minerals and stuff. But you also need to nourish your soul, right? Food is not just fuel. Food is not just fuel. It's an emotional thing. It's a social thing. We have phrases like breaking bread and things like that. We culturally, food has been a core part of our history as human beings. No matter where in the world you're from, no matter what culture you come from, food is always going to be a big part of that. And so it's not just about nourishing yourself physically, but it's about nourishing yourself in a more holistic perspective, where you're giving yourself what you feel like you need. It's not about taking things out of what you eat. It's not about removing things. It's not about dieting. It's not about saying, I'm not going to eat this entire food group or I'm going to cut down on this, but start feeding yourself more. And most of the time, you probably know, I'm not here to tell you what the way that you should be eating, but you probably know what you should be eating more of. Okay. So nourish your body. That's the second one. The third pillar is mental stimulation, which is like exercise for the mind, right? If you don't exercise your mind, the issues you're going to have in later life in terms of cognitive decline are really going to lower your quality of life. So you need to keep that mind sharp by there's two different ways you can do this. One is passive stimulation, which is things like reading, listening to music, stuff like that, stuff which is almost like you're just absorbing. And then the other is active stimulation, and that is where you're doing something. So instead of listening to music, you're playing music, or instead of reading, you're writing, or instead of watching something, you are creating something, you're crafting something, or you're having a conversation with someone about an interesting topic, stuff which is more dynamic. So that active stimulation, and both of those things really get the old grey matter working and stop it from declining, because if you don't use it, you lose it. So that's the third thing, is mental stimulation. The fourth pillar is recovery. And a bit like nourishment not being just about nutrition, recovery is not just about rest. Rest is an important part of recovery. Yes, we need sleep. Yes, sleep has to be a priority for us to stay well and to have a good, long and high quality life. But it's not just about that. We also need to recover without sleep. We need to have like kind of restful states while we're awake. And we also need to have active recovery. So time away from or the mental strains of life can take the form of physical activity. If you've got a very physically active job, then the rest and recovery you need is physical rest. But if you've got a very mentally or emotionally demanding job, which, let's be honest, the higher proportion of jobs are now, the higher proportion of work is less manually intensive and more mentally intensive, then the rest you need is mental rest. The recovery you need is mental recovery. You don't come home from work after a long day of sitting in front of the computer and need to physically rest, even though it feels like you just need to flake out on the sofa. That's not what you actually need. What you need is time away from this stuff. And one of the best things you can do is to get out and do something physically active, because that will remove that chronic mental stress, or at least give you some respite from it. So think about active recovery, not just restful recovery. And then the fifth of the 5 pillars is connection. And we've learned more about that over the past few years, and the importance of connection with other human beings since having to isolate from each other for a long period of time. We have learned so much about how that affects us. And it's not just about our connection with other people as well, but it's our connection with our environment, and it's our connection with ourselves. Most people see themselves as separate to nature. We see humans have kind of created this idea where there's humans and there's nature. But really, we're an animal which is part of a global ecosystem, and being connected to that is a powerful tool. It's a form of spirituality, really. And whether you want to connect with the world around you through religion or spirituality, whether it's God, the universe, nature, whatever it happens to be, but that connection with something bigger, that connection with what's around you, is so powerful for well-being. And it's so powerful for a sense of purpose, and so on and so forth. It doesn't have to be religious, but it can be if you want. So connection with each other as humans, connection with something bigger than us, whether it's nature, religion, spirituality, and also connection with ourselves. We always hear this idea of, listen to your body. But we've forgotten how to do that, or we've never learned. What we need to do is to spend some time kind of thinking about how we actually feel physically. How do we actually feel? Is there something going on that you need to know about? Do you not feel quite right? Mentally, how do you feel? And some of the best ways of doing this, meditation can be really, really good. If meditation isn't accessible for you, I don't really like meditation, to be perfectly honest. Journaling can be a really good way of doing it, because then you can get stuff down on the paper and you can just write a little bit about how you're feeling. Those kinds of connections are really, really important. Connections with other human beings, connections with nature and the world, the wider world, and connections with yourself. So those are the 5 pillars. Just to recap those: movement, nourishment, mental stimulation, recovery, and connection. So that's the second point that I wanted to share with you. like I said, I know I'm glossing over this nice and quick, so it's a lot to take in. But this is just an overview, okay? This is just stuff for you to kind of get the hang of, get an idea of, so that you can understand that it's accessible to you. The next thing I'm going to share is something practical that you can actually take away from this and go and do if you want to make changes in any of these areas. Because now you know what the 5 pillars are, which are supporting this overall structure of a fit, healthy lifestyle and your ability to cope with and recover from stress. We want to know how we can make repairs to these pillars when they maybe look like they're crumbling a little. So as I talk through those pillars, there may be 1 or 2 of those, or maybe all 5 of them, that you think, oh, that one could do with a bit of work. That one looks a little bit shaky in the foundations. I need to make some repairs. Maybe the movement, maybe you need to get a bit more active. Maybe it's the nourishment. Maybe you could be eating slightly differently, nourishing your body slightly differently. You know, any of these, you might be thinking, okay, that's where I need to make some changes. And it will be different for each of you. So how do we actually do that? Well, sustainable habit change, I've broken down into 4 steps. The 4 R's, I call them: reflect, reset, restart, and repeat. This is something that I've taught in kind of workshops, talks, in individual coaching and stuff like that. It's in my book. This is a really nice step-by-step process. I'm going to give you the whistle-stop tour of these 4 things, but there's a couple of things if you really want to work on these. My book, Fit Body, Fit Mind, goes through it in a bit more detail. That's on Amazon. In fact, this is what it looks like. That's the book. Okay, if you get that on Amazon, the part 3, the 4 foundations of effective habit change, that takes you through step by step how to actually do this. Or I'm just about to launch a mini course, which is like 30 quid, like real low level investment kind of thing, which walks you through this step by step and gives you the chance to kind of actually act on it. So if you want more detail, those are 2 options. But the overview, the whistle stop tour, if you like, the first step, reflect. This has 3 questions. One is, where do you want to be? Okay, where do you want to be? And the importance of this question is, it's not about what other people want. It's not about what society wants. It's about what is genuinely important to you. Where do you want to be? What do you want to achieve? What are your goals? But they have to be yours. And when you start writing these down, you can look and go, is that really mine? Or have I absorbed that from someone else, like a friend, a family member who thinks that I should do this? Or have I absorbed it from society as a whole, telling me I need to be a certain size, a certain shape, stuff like that? Or is it something that's really valuable to me? So that's the first question. Where do you want to be? The second question, of course, is where are you now? You can't get a good set of directions if you don't know your starting point. If you're headed to London, the directions from where I am down in Devon are going to be very different from the directions from someone up in Manchester. So you need to know your starting point as well as your destination. So where are you now? And be honest with yourself. The third question in that reflect part is, what habits do you have now? This is like what I call a habit audit. What habits do I have right now which are moving me from point A to point B, and which ones are slowing me down or preventing me from going from point A to point B? So you have habits which are serving me, habits which are holding me back. And you can do this, you can put all of your habits on a daily basis into one of those 2 columns. Because if it's not moving you forward, it will be holding you back. And then you get an idea of what you're actually doing currently, and then you can start making changes. Because most of the time people skip that step. They don't look at what they're currently doing. They just look at what are other people doing and I'm going to copy them. So audit your habits first, because some of the things you'll be doing will already be working in your favor. You won't be doing everything wrong. It's a good starting point to do that. The second step, reset. Reset is where you're kind of going to make your new plan. So reset, there's 2 parts to this. There's 2 parts to the reset part. One of them is something which a lot of people miss. And that is about your identity, because you can't behave in a way which contradicts your identity or your self-image, at least not sustainably, not for a long period of time. So ask yourself, what kind of person would achieve these goals? What kind of person would achieve what I have laid out as where I want to be? And you think about the kind of characteristics that person might have, and you write down sentences which describe them, but you write down as if it's your characteristics. Now, you don't have to believe them at this point, but you could say, I am disciplined, I'm organized, I'm active, I value my well-being. You could write down these kind of sentences, a bit like affirmations, right? You don't have to believe them at this point. You don't have to believe them. It's just an exercise. Feels a bit weird sometimes writing down things that you don't necessarily believe yet, but just imagine that that's where you're going to end up. And you just start writing them down at this point. Language is very, very powerful. And then the second part of that is, what would that person do on a daily basis? And you can reflect back at your habit audit and the things that you are doing right and the things that you're not doing right. But if you do that and you go, okay, what kind of things would that person do on a daily basis to achieve those goals? And this is the point where you want to aim for about 25 things on the list. The first 10 will be easy. Once you get past 10, it starts getting really difficult, but that's where the best bits come. The obvious ones aren't always the ones you want to start with. They're sometimes too big to start with. They're not sustainable. So aim for 25, because at the end, when you're really scraping the barrel, you're going to be picking some really small behaviors that people do, or that people would do if they were that identity and they were working towards those goals. So the two questions for reset are, what kind of person would achieve these goals and write those I am statements? And what kind of things would they do on a daily basis? 25 habits, 25 daily habits you're aiming for that you think that kind of person would work on. The third step is restart. This is where you're going to start taking action. And there's two parts to this one as well. The first part is you look at that list of 25 habits and you take 3 or 4 of the smallest, easiest ones off that list to start with. Not the most impactful, but the easiest, because you want to start getting points on the board early, because that's great for motivation. That's great to make you feel, yeah, I can do this. What's next? If you start with something difficult, you're going to undermine yourself right at the start. So pick the easiest, not the most impactful. That's the big difference between what most people do at New Year, right? It's not the things that will make the biggest difference. It's the little things that you will barely even notice. So you pick 3 or 4 of those things, and they're going to be your focus for the first month. Those 3 or 4 things you're going to connect to existing habits in your day. So they're going to be structured using the following formula. When I X, I will Y. Or after I X, I will Y. Or before I X, I will Y. So they'll be linked to an existing habit in your morning routine, your evening routine, your daytime, your lunchtime, whatever. So it could be, before I get in the shower, I will do 10 squats. Or it could be, while the kettle is boiling, I will write down 3 things I'm grateful for. Or it could be, before I go to bed, I will read 5 pages of a fiction book. It could be anything like this, but it's linked to an existing thing that you do. So it's anchored to something that, like, to a cue that already exists. Okay. And then the second part of that is, for each of those 3 to 4 habits you pick, you're going to engineer your environment. You're going to make those habits easy. You're going to make them easier, and you're going to put barriers in the way of the bad habits that you're trying to break. So you're going to engineer your environment. What could you do so that you're more likely to read 5 pages of your book before you go to bed? I'm going to put my book by my bed. What about if I want to drink a glass of water as soon as I wake up? Oh, I'm going to put a glass of water by my bed. What about if I want to do 10 squats before I get in the shower? I'm going to stick a Post-it note on my bathroom mirror to remind me. What about if I want to go for a walk in the morning? I'm going to swing my feet out of bed, and my trainers will be on the floor right next to my bed, and I'll put them on. And then that's the first bit done. Then you're like, well, might as well go for a walk now. Okay, so there's various things you can do, and this will be different for each of you. What can you do to engineer your environment to make those habits more likely to happen? So those 2 bits there for restart are: pick the 3 or 4 habits and anchor them to an existing part of your day, and then engineer your environment for each of those. That's the restart point. And then repeat. There are 2 things when it comes to repeat. The first is having a growth mindset and understanding that you are going to mess up. You are going to slip up. You are going to fail on certain days. You are going to miss days, and that's okay. You do not need to be perfect. Even if you're only like 70 or 80% perfect, you're going to be doing really well. If you manage to do 5 days a week, even if you manage to do 3 days a week, that's better than what you've been doing currently. The more consistent you can be, the more likely it will become automatic. But don't worry about days that you mess up. Sometimes you might even go, actually, do you know what? I've picked the wrong habit here. This is too hard. Just go back through it again and go, right, I'm going to pick something easier. Knowing that you can grow and develop, knowing that you aren't just stuck where you are, is so important. And that's that growth mindset, that understanding that you can improve, you can move forward, and making mistakes is part of that journey. And the second part of repeat is accountability. Who are you going to be accountable to? Are you going to be accountable to a group of people, a group of colleagues, a sports team, a group of friends? Are you going to be accountable to one person, a spouse, your best mate? Are you going to be accountable to yourself by keeping a habit tracker where you tick off each day when you've done the habits? Because let's be honest, humans do not like leaving one of those boxes empty. So even just being accountable to yourself can be powerful. But when you're accountable to someone else and you hold each other to, you might have different goals, you might have different habits you're working on, but you can check in with each other and go, how's this week going? That accountability, we're social creatures, that accountability can really help you sustain things long term. So just to remind you, reflect. Where do you want to be? Where are you now? Habit audit, reset. Okay, what kind of person would achieve those goals and what does their day look like? What habits they have? Restart. Pick 3 or 4 of the easiest habits and anchor them to existing habits in your day, and then engineer your environment to make those habits easy, and then repeat. Maintain a growth mindset and be accountable to someone, even if that's just to yourself. Hopefully this has been useful, guys. We're at 11:30 now. Just to reiterate a couple of the main points here, I really want you to think about what we said at the start. Fitness is your ability to cope with and recover from stress, and it is a currency you can spend on whatever adds value to your life. So it's about you, it's about your terms, it's about your priorities, your commitments, your preferences. It's not about anyone else. You don't have to do the same as anyone else. You don't have to do the same as me. I'm not here to tell you to do the same as me. I'm just giving you some tools that you could use. It will have an effect on your individual quality of life, and that will knock on to the quality of life of those people around you, your colleagues, your family, your friends. Because if your quality of life improves and you're happier and more well, then that is going to affect other people, because we interact with people on a daily basis. I will say as well, if you've got any questions, please bung them in the comments as well. I've seen some really good comments coming in from people, so thank you so much for that. If you've got any, please bung those in now. Also, I've just put up a little link at the bottom there, jayunwin.com/slight improvement. It's a weekly newsletter I was doing a few months ago. I'm bringing it back towards the end of this month. So that'll be a weekly email newsletter with various tips around well-being, habit change and stuff like that. Slight improvement, because it is all about gradual slight improvements. It's not about huge overhauls. So you can head to that address and you can sign up. I did mention earlier on as well that I'm going to be doing a mini course, which will be kicking off on the 30th of this month, Monday the 30th. If you're interested in that, that's going to be 30 quid. And it basically goes through all of the stuff that we've talked about today in a bit more detail, so that you can actually implement it. If you'd like to do that course, like I said, it's only 30 quid. It's a nice little entry level thing. I will be putting the link in the comments so that you can go and have a look at that. You can get yourself sorted on that whenever you like, but it starts on January the 30th. If you've got any questions, like, I'm going to have a look quickly now and see if we've got any comments coming in. Glad to hear that the pillars are making sense, Adrian. Yeah, sitting's not great, is it? Where else? Davina, really glad that you've got a new perspective on it. Carly, glad you enjoyed it as well. And Laura, brilliant stuff. Really, really happy to hear that it's hit the mark. If we haven't got any other questions, I've run over by 3 minutes more than I kind of expected to, but I could talk about this stuff for hours. There's so much more detail in it. If you ever want to get stuck in and have a chat about it, please feel free to message me on LinkedIn. This is available on replay, Jonathan. This will be, once this is kind of over, it will be available from replay on LinkedIn, which is where I see you are. It also will be on my YouTube channel as well, so you can go back and watch the whole thing. No worries, Tash. Glad you enjoyed it. Brilliant stuff. Like I said, any comments, any likes, any reactions, any shares, anything like that, tag people in. If you think this has been useful for you and you want other people in your connections to see this, please do share it. Or please, if you've got specific ideas, send it to them, or bung a tag in the comments as well, so that you can so they can see it and benefit from it as well. Happy days. Lovely stuff. So with that's everything. So hopefully you have a wonderful rest of your Wednesday. I look forward to kind of hearing from some of you and to go through the comments in a little bit more detail and send some replies. I will be doing another one of these in a month's time. So I think I'll be doing them kind of once a month. Not sure what the topic will be next in February, but please keep an eye out for that. And it's just an opportunity to help as many people as possible. Big love to all of you. Have a fantastic week, and I'll speak to you all again very soon.